Welcome in to the Bear Cave. We are going to be talking about the Chicago Bears versus the San Francisco 49ers. A game preview. It is in the afternoon slot at 3:25 this Sunday. So just to give a basic intro into the game, the 4-8 Bears are on a 6-game losing streak and are visiting the 5-7 San Francisco 49ers, who are on a 3-game losing streak. And the 49ers are currently favored by 4. The Bears are 3-3 in their last 6 meetings with the 49ers and last played and won in San Francisco in 2018, which was 2 quarterbacks ago. So, before we get into kind of just the general discussion, let's kind of talk about the injuries from this game or possibly going in this game. Now, the Bears, they have do not practice Ryan Bates, Elijah Hicks, Roshan Johnson, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift. Very notable for the running back room, Dobbs, as those are their 2 starting running backs. And the limited is Kevin Byard and Coleman Shelton. So, San Francisco 49ers, Aaron Banks is injured, Nick Bosa is injured, Flanagan Fowles is injured, Jordan Mason, Trent Williams. Obviously, CMC is not playing. Now, limited, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, and Diamador Lenore. So just injuries to think about before we go into kind of the general discussion of this game. So, Dobbs, I think, I want your take on this because this is kind of the 49ers by some, even though, like, for people who don't watch the 49ers, they have been through, they're not a bad team necessarily. They've just been through a load of injuries. What is kind of your general idea of what should be the storyline of this game?
Well, I think, again, look, here's the bottom line is, look, it's the Thomas Brown show, right? I think that's from the Bears perspective, that's the storyline is how hard is this team going to fight for Thomas Brown, right? And from the Niners side of things, obviously it's different. But as far as the Bears go, it's about showing up for Thomas Brown. And, look, like we were talking about the injury situation, what does scare me is, look, the reality is that running back situation is scary right now because a concussion is something you really can't predict when someone's going to all be fully better from. And obviously, that's the last thing, right? It should be the last thing you want to rush somebody back from. And on top of that, Swift also, right, at this point, when you haven't practiced by Thursday, we're starting to get real concerned. I mean, and I get it, though. Look, you also could look at it from the perspective, well, they're just going to make sure he's as rested up as possible with the idea that he'll be for sure playing if Roshan can't play. And you're kind of like playing who's going to be ready and who will be safer to play, right? Because like I said, you're not playing with a concussion, at least if you're a good organization. But, I think the bottom line is, yeah, again, just look, when you're a team that's fighting for your interim coach, from my perspective, I just saw the Saints do it, and as skeptical as I was, I had that feeling, right? Like, when you finally get rid of who the majority of the team thinks is the weakest link, which in the Bears case was Flus, right? The locker room saying, okay, you know what? Let's prove to ownership that they did the right thing, and let's really go out here and fight for our new guy. Even if, again, Thomas Brown isn't the answer long term, you normally get, we've seen it, you normally get at least 1 week of really good football from the squad.
I think my thing, Dobbs, is I've kind of heard this from like Olin Kreutz and some other Bears, just media guys. And it's really, at first I didn't like the narrative of this, but it's kind of started to stick with me a little bit is like, yeah, like, okay, they have all these leaders, but these leaders haven't won anything. Like Jalen Johnson hasn't won anything. Cole Kmet hasn't won anything. DJ Moore hasn't won anything. Mercedes Lewis has been a part of like Packers teams. Like his word probably holds the most weight, honestly. But it's at this point, you got rid of the coach. You got rid of 2 coaches, right? You've lost coaches last year. Obviously, this is not all fall on the players, but they do have to play better. They can only do what is called on the field, but there are certain instances where the Bears have just not played well this year. So, to your point, they need to capitalize on the fact that they don't have these coaches here anymore. And so, just to kind of break down, this is an audition for Thomas Brown, right? He has 5 games to audition for the vacant head coaching spot that the Bears have. This is one of the easier games, believe it or not, in their next 5 because of the fact that the 49ers are injured, right? They have the Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers again, and then they play Seattle. Seattle's probably, in terms of skill, not talking about injury, probably one of the easier games. It's the NFC West teams that are the easier games. But those aren't walks in the park. It's not another Carolina Panthers. It's not another Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I do want to point out that these are not the 49ers of the past years. And the 49ers are a combined 11-17 in 2 seasons after they made a Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan. So this is a down year for them, right? But obviously, with CMC being out, with Jordan Mason being out, you need to capitalize. And if you're Thomas Brown and you're actively vying for the head coaching job, this is a game that you have to win because if you have to show that you can do what Matt Eberflus did not, which was winning games that you should win. And this is one of the games that you should win.
Again, absolutely. And I think again, the big thing is to like look, as far as the Niners injury report goes, like we talked already about how the Bears, there's certain spots where we're concerned about, but I would say, look, I don't think it's anywhere near as much, in my opinion, as much as I am right with if the Niners, if I'm a Niners fan, because let's start with this too. First of all, prayers for the man and the situation he's going through, right? I
Trent
couldn't
Williams,
imagine,
yeah.
but with Trent Williams, that's a very unknown situation of
And
like with what he's dealing with.
and Chavarius Ward, even
What?
though
All
it was
right,
a
no,
little bit a
that's
while ago, yeah.
right. No, and absolutely prayers for him and his family as well. But it's with Trent right now, it's kind of like, is Trent going to be back? And I wouldn't blame him if he's not in any way, shape, or form. So Trent, you're already right. We don't know about Trent. That's an unknown, and I would probably lean towards this considering right now not practicing, right, and with the ankle, it's like I don't know. That's very up in the air. Nick Bosa, right, still dealing with a couple things, right. I don't, and he hasn't practiced. That's getting concerning as well. Albeit again, you know, it's not like he couldn't play, but either way, there's so many guys missing on the Niners, like we already talked about. Jordan Mason, right? We're trending real bad. We know CMC's not going to be out there rest of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is kind of also the point you've hit too, is to put it into perspective. Right, the Bears, they've hit the lowest point, right?
Yeah.
Like there was like getting right.
Well, no, as a Bears fan, it can always get worse. It can always get worse, Dobbs. So I just want to preface you before you say that. Like,
It
you
could.
think it hit rock bottom, but it
Okay,
could get
you're
worse.
right that it could, but like, but I'm just trying. Okay, in comparatives to like week to week,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? Where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
in
The
the Bears'
Patriots was
heads,
rock
they're
bottom.
like, we got Flus out of the room, we're ready to go show off for Thomas Brown, and none of the other side of things with the Niners, it's like it just keeps getting worse. You know, we're losing our star guys. We don't know if our star guys are going to be out there, the other ones.
Yeah.
And on top of it, your expectations for the season were so high. And the reality is looking you more and more in the face every day that, right, it's at this point, really, unless you like win out and you have a miraculous turn of events, you're missing the playoffs dead in the face. So, and I think there's a reality that hits then where all of a sudden, as we see, right, no one's going to come out and say it on their side, but in certain areas, effort dips here and there. And when the writing starts to be on
Yeah.
the wall, you start to see guys kind of check out. Right. It's already not a good situation as far as all that's concerned. I mean, again, look, the bottom line is this: it's two teams that have injuries in not good spots that you want to be in. But I do think that the Bears are just in a better situation mentally at this point.
Let's move in to kind of just like at face value the matchup. So the 49ers win 7 out of the 8 categories here. So if you want to look on offense, they win on points per game, yards per game, passing yards per game, rushing yards per game. On defense, the only thing the Bears are better at is points per game. I think that is definitely skewed. Now, this is whole year round. This isn't just like the recent, occurrences. Like we saw the Niners kind of get stomped out by the Buffalo Bills. And we know that the Bears actually do let up a lot of yards on defense. This is not the same defense that we saw last year. After Andrew Billings went down, their run fits, their run defense is just not as good. Because teams are able to run the ball as much as they are, like that opens up the pass game a lot. So the 49ers have a better defense on yards per game, pass yards per game allowed, run yards per game allowed. So, and here's the issue is I kind of put in my notes, and this is kind of, when we get to our strengths and weaknesses, we can talk about that. But you need this rushing defense from the 49ers is really the weak point, right? And you're not going to have, you might not have Swift. You might not have Roshan Johnson. And we'll talk about why Roshan Johnson could have been a bigger role in this game and could have been kind of crucial to the Bears succeeding. But just looking at this, like the Niners are obviously the better team. But you look at Fred Warner, right? Like he's playing on like a fractured ankle. So there is like
Still
issues.
amazing to his
Right,
credit.
right. And this is not, like I said, the same 49ers team that we saw earlier in the year. And not that they were even the same 49ers team earlier in the year that they were the year before. But I just think this goes to show like how bad the Bears have been on all sides of the ball, throughout the season. Like, and to not think that like the Bears could just come in and beat a crippled 49ers team, because that's not the case. Like, this is still a team that has a lot of talent. And if Trent Williams plays, if Nick Bosa plays, if the 49ers are able to establish the run, then it's going to be a long day for the Chicago Bears.
Well, no, okay. Like that's kind of the thing is absolutely. I think, and that's kind of where I was leaning. Where what still will concern me with the Bears, because here's the thing that where I'm at with the Niners, right? Is with the Niners at least you are confident in your backup guys, even if it's not Jordan Mason. Like I would say that at this point, look, Garendo showed you some good stuff, right? You've seen good stuff from your other guys where you're at least like we can still move the ball and we're confident in that. As far as Travis Homer goes, Hunter, we're looking at a guy who's had under 10 carries in the last 2 seasons. And look, to his credit, like I would say,
I do not like
he's a
Travis
damn good pass blocker when it's his job. But unless we're going to go out there and throw the ball, right? There's going out there and throw the ball 50 times a game, this game, that's not going to be a good situation if that has to be the case. Because, and look, could he shock us? Hunter, could he shock us? Could he come out the Travis Homer legacy game? I don't know. I mean, it's on the table, I suppose, at this point, looking at the injury report. But again, I'm still leaning towards the Bears. Even though Flus isn't there, they still have a trick up their sleeve as far as the running back goes. They're kind of just feeling out. They're going to let their guys rest, and whoever's the most fresh, ready to go. It's late in season, right? In terms of like, and to that also, I know, but with that being said, it's kind of where there's a caveat is the offense has switched around, right?
Yeah.
You've switched offensive coordinators technically at this point, right? We're switching around. It's like musical chairs at offensive coordinator because now technically Thomas Brown isn't the OC.
And Chris Beatty, the wide receiver coach.
Chris Beatty is the OC. So I guess it kind of negates what I was going to say, because what I was going to say is you'd really, at this point of the year, yes, practice is still important no matter what week it is, obviously, but you have a little bit more mitigation room, to miss some practice if you're already this late. But I kind of take back what I said, because now it's like, it still is going to be the same system in place, but things change inevitably when someone different's in charge. And this was kind of the thing I was going to get at too earlier, Hunter, is because we talked about this with different coaches before. Sometimes it goes good, sometimes it goes bad, right? And especially in interim situations. Like the 2 weeks we had where Thomas Brown was in there, right? Much better. I don't want to say loving it, but loving it compared to Shane Waldron.
Yes.
Well, now all of a sudden, Thomas Brown has so much more responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden, do we see a steady decline in what we were getting excited about? It's like there's a lot of contingencies at play for the Bears, and I will be the first to acknowledge that.
So I think one of the things that concerns me is I'm less concerned with Thomas Brown's offense falling off, right? I do think now I wonder if they're going to be more aggressive on defense, because Eric Washington is going to be calling the plays, who was the defensive coordinator while Flus was there, but Flus obviously was calling the plays. Eric Washington, I don't know if he's ever called plays before. Like, he may have done it for a year in Carolina, but I don't think he has. So first of all, that's something we have to think about. And Thomas Brown, he's going to be on the field. He's not going to be in the booth. I do think that the main difference between Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown is the offense just looks competent. Like, I'm not looking for anything to. Now, listen, if you're wanting to make Thomas Brown your head coach, he needs to go crazy on offense. But just to finish the year, just to get Caleb's development in his rookie year through on a nice track, it just needs to look competent. The offense just needs to look competent. That is the biggest switch from Thomas Brown or from Shane Waldron to Thomas Brown. So let's kind of move in. Obviously, the run game hasn't been much better, but let's move in to the strength and weaknesses, which is basically like our keys to win, right? So the Bear and these are all the craziest thing about these keys to win, right? Is I was looking through all the analytics on NFL Pro. They're so cliche. Like if you do the cliche football things as a Bears team, you should win this game, right? So the Bears must force multiple turnovers. The Bears must force multiple turnovers. I was looking at the wrong stat, my bad. Must force multiple turnovers versus a turnover prone 49ers team who are 21st in turnover differential. They're tied for the fifth most giveaways, 1.5 turnovers a game, while the Bears are fourth in turnover differential. They are 29th in least giveaways, which means they don't turn the ball over very much, and fifth most in takeaways. The Bears defense has 10 turnovers via fumbles this year, while the 49ers fumble and lose the ball at the second most rate in the league with 10 fumbles. The 49ers are tied for the ninth most interception takeaways this year, while the Bears are tied for the fourth least in interceptions thrown. So, if the Bears are able to turn the ball over, which we know what the Bears defense did last year, they have not been able to replicate how good they were on defense and turning the ball over this year. The 49ers we saw versus that Bills game, and obviously they're playing in a snowy condition. Like, if the Bears can turn the ball over and just not give the ball away, they should be able to limit the 49ers scoring strictly off, the amount of possessions that they have.
No, look, and here's my thing, Hunter, with all this is again, and this was kind of goes and ties back to what I was going to say about Thomas Brown just in general. Is I think because we've already acknowledged, right, for him to win the head coaching job, it's compared to the other guys we're going to have in the building, it's going to be a really hard thing to do. I think as far as yet, you're right that having the offense look massively different is going to be a huge thing that would push that in the right direction. But to me, what's just as important is finally getting this defense back on track. Because right, and we know it had to be. It was different last year, but the identity of the team was just a ferocious defensive unit. And to your point, yes, it's not the same. And yes, you could attribute that to Billings not being there. But I'm not a guy, you know me. I don't like to have to rely on one person or two, three guys, right, to have success. I want to see in some way, and I know it's not going to really all fall on him in the slightest, but if this defense can make a change where you can rally that identity and start and get in that room and say, all right, I agree with these changes we're going to make. Let's really start to focus on moving some fronts, right? Changing the way we attack, right? We attack the team because obviously, as far as Flus was doing it, it wasn't working anymore. So you're Thomas Brown and you can get in there, help change the identity, help change the culture of the defense again to get back to that firing, fast, right, hard-hitting unit that we saw last year. To me, that's just as big of a deal. And I think that's really where things have to start to change the most if Thomas Brown genuinely has a chance to be the Bears head coach next year. And again, I'm just making this, to me, it's such a talking point because yes, the reality is, and I think that you agree with this, we're going to see very quickly whether or not that's kind of a reality, especially because this game is such a big telling point to me.
Yeah.
Because like you said, yes, the Niners are certainly not a team that's going to roll over. They're just not. They have the pedigree regardless, albeit that things haven't gone their way this year. So it's like, if you can show that you're going to go against a team that has that pedigree and do what we think you can do, and then really show up and show out, change that identity, keep the identity that we've seen going, and if not, even evolve it now that you're fully in charge. If you go 2 for 2 on that, all of a sudden there's going to have to be some discussions that start again. You got to take it week by week. It's not like you've said, just like we said, like last time we recorded and we were live, just because you have a really good week once is not a reason to crown him instantly by any means, but it's at least a starting point. And it's such a big week because we really finally get to see what the Bears are going to look like with some fight in them for the first time in about 7 weeks now.
Let's also kind of, because you mentioned the defense, like let's go to point 3 before we talk about point 2. So the Bears, we talked about, like, their defense has struggled against the run. And one of the strengths of the 49ers offense is obviously their run game, even with CMC out, even with Jordan Mason out. Like, Isaac Guerrero is very fast. He's kind of a one trick pony in terms of his speed and what he can do. But if he breaks a run on you, I don't know if you're going to catch him. So the 49ers have explosive runs, and they're tied eighth for the most runs of 10 plus yards this year, while the Bears are tied seventh for the most runs over 10 plus yards allowed. The 49ers are fourth in rushing yards over expected on offense with 288, while the Bears are third in rushing yards over expected allowed with 277. Last point on this, the 49ers run the ball outside the tackles at the second highest rate in the NFL this year, while Bears opponents run outside the tackles versus them at a tied 29th least amount in the league, which I would equate that to probably the athleticism that the Bears linebacking core has, even though, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards has, but Tremaine Edmonds has not lived up to his contract. They are good athletic linebackers that will find the ball. So I do think that them running outside the tackles, the 49ers, could be a result of the fact that their opponents stack the box against them, which is 8 defenders or more at the highest rate in the league. But the Bears run a light box 50% of the time, which is 9th in the league. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. And light box is 6 defenders or fewer. So I do think that if the 49ers can get the run game going, it's going to be a long, 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 long day for the Bears because they're an explosive team, and we know how explosive plays can really hurt the morale of a team that has dropped 6 in a row. Like, the morale cannot be super high right now. They may get that boost from the interim head coach, but the reality is they lose this game, they lose the next game. All that's out the window.
No, absolutely. And kind of just to go off of that, look, and I'm never going to sit here and blame anything on one guy because it's far from just being a one guy thing. But to your point about, right, the Bears linebacking core, as far as this year goes, right, it hasn't been really super exciting, right, and necessarily in any spot, albeit. But with Tremaine Edmonds specifically, I think what really is sad about it is there was definitely some real big glimmers last year, right? Where towards the end of the year, at least you could say for sure, like he's really rocking and rolling. Like, all right, well, really excited about next year, and we've talked about this a lot too, in the past, with polls. For all the times we can sit here and say that where he's done something really good, there's definitely a lot of spots you can point also and say, like, in hindsight, that really wasn't the play. And giving all that money to Tremaine, as far as him being an interior linebacker, and right, to be clear, if a guy is really worth it, you pay him. But it's kind of tough to gauge. I would even say, to an extent, inside linebackers sometimes are kind of, and this look, this is not always is the case. Let me be crystal clear. So far from always being the case, we've seen the exceptions, right? We know from experience multiple times. Fred Warner, right? There's plenty of guys I could go off of, but a former Bear that we know very well, sometimes they're worth it. But I'd say the interior linebackers are sometimes like the running backs of defenses when you pay them.
You can look at it like that.
Where it's like, you're, especially with how much that they're engaging in contact against much bigger guys.
I think it's a lot of coaching too. I mean, look at Robert Spillane, look at Zach Bond, look at Jack Sanborn, right? Like, these guys, like, you can,
and look how much some of these guys are getting paid too. That's where I'm going. You get where I'm going. Like, that's where it's similar to the running backs. Is in my mind, it's kind of like, you kind of got to play it chess. Like, you're kind of always going to think, where am I going next before that he wants that big contract. And the Bears didn't. Right. The Bears splurged, and it is what it is. I'm just, at this point, we can definitely sit here and say, right, barring a huge comeback, a huge turnaround under the new, I don't even want to say new regime because it's not a whole new regime, but you get what I'm saying, right? The new staff. I mean, it's possible, but at this point, it is one of the biggest problems. And like you said, look, the D line at this point just has to get to work. I mean, that's gonna be the biggest thing. Like I said, right? No matter how they want to go about changing it, something big has to change. They have to have a new identity as far as how they're going to attack teams. And that's something we're going to get to see this week. And it couldn't have happened, like I said, against a better team because we're getting that perfect sample size where it's against the guy who knows how to run the ball really well in Kyle Shanahan, but
Right.
they're beat up. They're not going to necessarily be at their full strength. So the Bears have got to show we can make adjustments. We are right. We're ready to do something new. I think that's the biggest message that has to be sent this week to every single Bears fan.
So let's talk quickly about the last point here is that the Bears need to establish the run game, which this is what I was talking about earlier with Roschon Johnson. So the Bears need to run the ball because the 49ers are 21st in run stuff rate, right? So that's 15.9% of the time they stuff the runs. And that run stuff rate is runs that are stopped for negative or no gain. Okay. So they're also 27th in EPA per rush on defense. And teams love to run the ball inside the tackles against the 49ers at the highest clip in the league at 56.3%, even though they stack the box 8 defenders or more at the 13th highest rate in the league. So San Francisco has also allowed the second highest amount of rushing touchdowns in the league this year at 19. So that is kind of what I was talking about is Roschon could have had a big day running between the tackles. They have a lot of rushing touchdowns. They don't stuff the run at a high rate. And the PFF has the 49ers ranked as the 29th graded run defense. Now, the 49ers on the other side of the coin, they do not allow explosive plays. They are tied ninth for the least amount of rushes over 10 plus yards. So, a lot of short yardage game, like what Roschon Johnson would be perfect for this game. If he's going to be out because of a concussion and they got to play Travis Homer, Demetric Felton, if Swift isn't going to be there, and they can't establish the run, like the 49ers are not a bad pass defense. So I do think if Roschon Johnson does not play this game, the Bears are going to be very, very, very hampered on what they're able to do on offense in terms of the run game because I don't see Swift. I mean, Swift may break some runs outside, but this would have been the perfect Roschon Johnson game.
No, it would. But look, here's the bright side to me, Hunter, is that yes, the Niners aren't a bad, right? They're not a bad pass defense team, but they're also not elite. And they certainly have their weaknesses. Look, to bring it back to the running thing, that's why no matter what, look, that's why I said it's on the table. It sounds memes. It sounds like memes. But the Travis Homer legacy game, if it has to happen, look, the bottom line is this, and every Niners fan would agree. As far as we talked about the Bears D line, right? Well, the reality of the situation is that the Bears D line is actually significantly better than the Niners D line, with despite all the problems we just talked about with the Bears D line. So, and the Niners fans know best. I mean, and let me be clear, especially if Nick Bosa not out there. This is assuming that Nick Bosa
If
might
Nick
not,
Bosa
is not
doesn't
going to be there.
play and Trent Williams don't play, it'll be a lot more even of a game.
Yeah, like if Nick is not out there, right? And this is the thing I want to be clear about too. Is that if we're going to point at the one guy that has done his job all year that still is awesome, right? Like Fred Warner is still awesome. Fred Warner still is an awesome run defender. But the bottom line is this: Devondre Campbell has been rough. So the logic is that you're just gonna you just have to go get somebody to go take care of Fred, and you can get it isolated on Devondre. You can run however you want. You're just gonna run Devondre's way. So, and I think the Bears are gonna approach with the same logic. And hand up again when the Niners got Devondre Campbell, I thought it was a really good acquisition. I thought he still had some left in the tank. Maybe he still does down the road. Maybe this is just not the right situation for him. But it's rough to say that when we've seen the success other linebackers have had in the Niners core. So I think if you're the Bears, you say, you know what, we're making sure Fred Warner's taken care of, even if Travis Homer's got to be out here, and somehow Travis Homer is going to have double the carries in this game than he's had over the last 2 years combined. If it has to happen, it has to happen. It couldn't have happened a better week as long as the Nick Bosa is out.
All right, let's finish up, I guess, the show here. We both have our game picks in. We're both taking the Bears. Dobbs is 8-4 on the year. I'm 7-5 for the Bears. I do think they're gonna win this game, but I would not be surprised if the defense just gets out schemed. Like, if the Bears want to win, I do feel like this is going to be like a high scoring game because even though Brandon Ayuk is out and Christian McCaffrey's out and the top two backs for San Francisco are out, like like this is Kyle Shanahan. Like he's going to scheme some things up. But I could also see where the Bears just come out of the fences, like swinging for the fences, like where they just shut them down. They're playing high energy ball. I think they're really amped up to play for Thomas Brown. I think if you can get, obviously the run game is going to be iffy if the starting two backs are out for the Bears, Swift and Rojo. But if you can get Caleb going through the air, like I do think that we could see the Romo Dunze game because DJ
I
Moore
was gonna
hasn't
say.
practiced for 2 straight games. I think Keenan Allen practiced today. But I know he's been nursing an ankle injury, but it could be one of those games where it's just Romo Dunze and Cole Kmet because I, I don't know if DJ Moore is going to play, and you're going to have to force it to your 9th overall pick, honestly. So if Rome was going to have a day, it's going to be this day. This could have been the Rojo Rome day, but it might just be Rome.
Well, I was gonna say that you actually you took the words out of my mouth. Look, we've seen Rome coming on a lot recently, and you know, I'm with you. As far as DJ Moore goes, it's that's just a situation I'm not going to gauge. Very well could end up playing and just where you're you're resting him, you're letting him get as much rest as possible. And you're going to say, we're going to go out here, we'll figure it out. But at the same time, it also could very much be, yeah, he needs some extra time. We're not going to rush him back. And then if that's the case, you took the words out of my mouth. Look, I think we're going to see a lot of Rome targets. And then I was going to say too, on the other side of things, because you kind of what you were saying about the Niners. I think if the Niners win this game, little bold prediction, I guess you could say. Little George Kittle 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Where George Kittle's cooking in the red zone. I can still see. Look, his credit where it's due, right? Talk about a Niner who's still been fantastic this year. George Kittle's doing his job week in and week out. And I could see the Bears having some trouble with George Kittle, honestly, from a matchup standpoint. So if we're talking about the 2 aces for each of these offenses, I'd say for sure I'm on the same page. Romo Dunze, George Kittle. Could it come down to them too? It very well could. And as far as your point with Caleb, and kind of like I was saying earlier, look, the Niners pass defense it's not bad, but if they can do what they've been doing the past couple weeks against, in my opinion, significantly better defenses, and I think that's just not even my opinion, just objectively, statistically, significantly better defenses. Look, Caleb this week, this could be a nuclear Caleb week. And I don't want to get anyone too excited because, again, like I was saying, I'm concerned too because when there's all these moving parts, it's hard to keep continuity, as you might figure. Actually, objectively, that's just not continuity. But you get what I'm saying, where it's hard to keep the same results in place, at least week to week when all this change is happening. But that's why I'd also make it much more impressive. And you know what? Bottom line is, Bears fans, it's the Thomas Brown legacy game. And could it just be the Travis Homer legacy game too? I guess we got to wait and see.
So Keenan Allen was a full participant today. So I think Keenan and Rome will complement each other nicely if they do end up playing, if he does end up playing. So I think with what the Bears have on offense, as long as they can just get their offense going and they cannot start slow. They cannot start slow. Because if they do, they can get behind. But we know, just like the Bears like to blow it, Shanahan can also blow it a lot when he's leading by 10. So all in
Niners are
all,
also prone to the slow starts too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where it's due, it could be just a slow start from both sides.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on the games, Dobbs? Or that's pretty much, our game preview. We're going to be doing these every week. It'll be up. The full video will be up on our YouTube if you joined late. We did, injury report, strengths and weaknesses, the matchup, how they match up just at face value statistically, and our game picks. And then we'll also have our post-game reaction. We'll go live for that. And then we'll do a pod middle of the week. So about 3 episodes a week, and we'll try to go live every time. So thank you guys so much for watching. Dobbs, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts, Hunter. Win or lose, we'll have plenty to discuss next week regarding the Bears' head coaching future and hopefully some positive stuff with Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
But either way, we'll have, offensive coordinator talk, head coach talk, positive or negative. We'll have plenty to talk about next week.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want more content, subscribe to the Bear Cave. Turn on your notifications. We're excited. We, kind of switched over from covering all the NFL to the Bears, and I've been really enjoying it so far. So excited to hopefully get some people on and do some off-season content as well as it's coming up because we know our season was over by Thanksgiving, unfortunately. And now maybe you want the Bears to lose and we get a higher draft pick, but I mean, I'm kind of on that train right now. I'd like to get some wins, maybe beat the Packers if they don't rest their starters and Detroit, just so Caleb can get some dubs. But
No, you know what? Enough,
I'm not cheering for 5-0.
No, because we've seen it with too many teams. Like enough of the, no, because look, bottom line is, and I think a lot of people agree with this. There are so many teams every year that have the same teams that have high draft picks.
Yeah.
They don't draft well. You miss it. You know what? Enough of that, Hunter. It's time for the Bears to change the identity. Even if it happens late in the year, it doesn't matter. It's time to start being a winning team, have a winning identity. Enough of this. No more loser mentality. We don't know.
They stink. They stink.
Bagging losses is not the play anymore. Wins, but at least like you said, at least if they lose a lot, basically everything that we're curious about will be answered, and they'll have to just hit home hard on
Ben Johnson blank check. Ben Johnson blank check. That's all I have to say. I'm overthinking it, Dobbs. I was thinking Vrabel. I was thinking, okay, the possibility of Belichick. Could they trade for a coach? Ben Johnson, blank check. I don't care. He's been doing it for 3 years. You don't galaxy brain the pick. Just like they didn't galaxy brain Caleb.
You've just locked in. It's Ben Johnson all the way.
Ben Johnson. I'm done. I'm done overthinking it. Like, you can think your way in and out of coaches, like who should be the coach. It's Ben Johnson. Just do it. Just do it right now. He didn't go with Washington. There's been multiple interests from him with the Bears job. They've talked about it over and over again. And to me, if it's keep getting talked about and people are saying, oh, yeah, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this, it's very obvious that he's leaking that he's interested in the Bears and the Bears are interested.
Now we're talking about it.
Like, it has to be Ben.
But yeah, before we close out, now we're talking about it. Look, we're having a good tangent here. After it's because this song, right, we're gonna talk about in the future at some point, and we'll talk about it now. We'll talk about it right now. Before, look, as far as the news that got leaked today, where we know Harbaugh was interested in the Bears this offseason, they shut it down, right? Look. And we know same thing with Ben Johnson.
It was contradictory though to what I don't know if you believe everything that Sears Tower tweets. It was contradictory to what he said though.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say this. At least we know it was possible. And look, I believe though. I do believe this. Let me just say this. This is what I do believe. I believe that irregardless if he was in on it, sold on it, that he would have came. I do believe that I know that the Bears didn't have him in the building.
No, they didn't. He's the coach at Michigan. Why would you talk to him?
Yeah. So if you blew that last year, and if you believe that the rumors are true that Ben Johnson would love to come to Chicago, and I believe it because I'm a big believer in a lot of guys. Right? They got families. They want to stay close to who they already have gotten close to. If you're Ben Johnson, you're moving over a state, right? You're moving over a small area, same division, same region of America. I think it's very on the table as far as Ben Johnson goes that I would believe that he would want to come to the Bears to be the head coach. I can totally understand. We saw what he's done with Jared Goff. Not that McVay didn't do something very similar at first and then it fell off a cliff. Weird. Jared Goff's had a weird career arc.
Yeah.
But like, if you're Ben Johnson, I can certainly understand, the idea of like, Caleb, right? Getting my own team that's been begging for me, like, because he's got to see how much the Bears fans want him. So I can understand very much how he'd want to come if those rumors are true and you're the Bears. You gotta lock in this offseason, Hunter.
I think it's Ben Johnson blank check. I do think, and like here, I don't like necessarily that. Okay, I don't mind right now. This may change, but I don't mind that Carl Williams can be vocal about this. Like, maybe they need someone to kind of shame them publicly. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of back channel communication between like Carl Williams and the Bears and like who they want as head coach. And the reality is, like, he doesn't want his kid to fail. I wouldn't either. And if you can get the right guy, so just to reference the Jim Harbaugh. So Dan McNeil tweeted that Jim Harbaugh wanted to talk to the Bears in January, but Kevin Warren squashed it. Obviously, they have a history in the Big Ten. Via a long-term employee, Harbaugh expressed interest in the head coaching job. The staffer told Ryan Poles, who told Warren. The president dismissed it summarily. Sears Tower, who has had the inside track on some Bears stuff for a while before the draft last year, now he's back. He said Dan's report is clearly recycling old news. At the time, Harbaugh's agent was trying to generate Bears interest against the Chargers for the benefit of his contract. So he told someone Harbaugh was interested in the Bears, hence the offseason reports of Harbaugh wanting to come to the Bears, when in reality he wanted to go to the Chargers. The Bears caught scent of this report, and that's when Poles shut it down because he was never planning on moving on from Eberflus. Idiotic decision,
Well, I'll say
moronic decision.
it all was cool until the last sentence there.
Right. Well, so then as a counter to continue to generate Bears interest and make Harbaugh still look good, Harbaugh's agent probably said that the Bears were interested, but it was Warren who shut it down, so it was out of their hands. Then somebody on the lower hierarchy in the Bears probably heard that at the time and shared it with Dan, who's now reporting it blindly. So is he technically wrong? No, but there's context to this stuff.
But time out. What if that's really just a cover up to make the Bears not look as bad? You know what I mean? It's sometimes there's some test going on here, Hunter. Like just because now it looks really bad. So now you gotta cover it up.
Dobbs, I get it. But when you look at it, like it's the Bears, dude. Like they've got it wrong so many times. Like even if they got this wrong, like I'm not surprised, and it doesn't bother me anymore because I've accepted that like any hope you have in this franchise is probably going to get shot down. Now they fired the head coach midseason. I think they got the quarterback right, so they've done some things differently. But until they align everything, and the issue is, I wouldn't be surprised if coming in to, okay, let me ask you this, Dobbs. If Ben Johnson came in and they think he's the perfect candidate, right? He interviews well. His plan is good. But then he comes in and says, yeah, I don't want to be with Ryan Poles because what happens if, we have bad injury luck. He doesn't perform well. They don't perform well right off the bat and they want a clean slate, right? And then you have, third year, new head coach, blah, blah, blah. They never one and done to coach. But would you turn away Ben Johnson if he was the perfect candidate, if he said, I want to align with the GM, like I want a different GM? Would you rather have Ben Johnson or would you rather have Ryan Poles? Because at this point, I'm okay with moving on from Poles. I don't want him fired. Like I would be okay if he stayed, but I'm very 50-50 on him.
Well, again, from the outside looking in, as far as having deep emotional investment in the team, I'll tell you this. Again, I think he made a move that completely changed the trajectory of the franchise's future going forward. Like I said, and you're my reference, Hunter. I was saying that Caleb Williams was going to be the greatest prospect to come out of college far before we even knew the Bears had the first overall pick. I mean, I've been saying this since before he was his year he was draft eligible. I mean, it was like, yeah, this guy, whoever gets him, they're going to get someone who's, if he hits his potential, has the potential to be a multi-time Super Bowl champion, multi-time All-Pro, multi-time Pro Bowler. So from that perspective, you're like, yeah, right. It's really tough to consider that you'd want him out this shortly after he made the move to change the franchise. But then we also always go back to this because this is where it gets funny, is that in reality, the Panthers really just boneheaded it out.
Yeah.
Because to Poles' credit,
he did pick the right franchise to trade with.
He put the cheese in the trap for Tepper. You gotta be happy with that. But to the point of it really makes sense though, because it's almost like the fact that the Panthers were willing to do that truly is mind-boggling. Because if you're the Panthers, you should have been sitting there if we suck again next year, it doesn't matter. That's the guy we could get. And this is no discredit to Bryce Young, especially look how Bryce has been playing recently, right? Credit to him, man.
Yeah.
He's looking a lot better. But
David Tepper looks like a genius.
Ceilings,
I'm lying.
Right. What would you say about Tepper?
I said Tepper looks like a genius.
If we're comparing ceilings, as much as I still think Bryce does, right at this point, look, you get the right coaches in the building, Bryce still has a high ceiling. Caleb's ceiling is a Josh Allen, Mahomes-esque ceiling, right? Like a truly elite ceiling. So it is, again, it's funny because he fleeced Tepper. And it's not like Tepper has a good track record. So if you want to look at it from the perspective, there's two ways you can look at it. It's kind of where I'm getting at. You can look at it on this hand. He made the greatest move in the last 40, 50 years for the Bears. and he set us up to have the franchise-altering path. Or you say, almost any GM would have probably done the same thing.
I don't know. I like the Kevin White draft pick a little bit better.
It just depends how you want to look at it, Hunter. Do you think he's a genius? Do you think he did what anybody else would have done in
I
the
think
situation,
I
and they
think
just ended up getting really lucky that the Panthers ended up being terrible again? Go
I
figure.
think the move
And
was
drafting a quarterback doesn't change everything.
smart. I think the move was smart, but I think it's elevated by luck. Like he lucked into Caleb Williams. Now, would I be mad with Drake May? No. Would I be mad with Jane Daniels? I don't think he would be doing very well here, honestly. I mean, that's not a discredit to Jane Daniels. I think Caleb is truly a different type of prospect that can withstand a lot. I think May would have been the same thing. Um, but with that being said, I do think like he lit the 32nd pick of the draft on fire when he traded for Chase Claypool. Like he balled out when he
I always
but here's
forget about that
I
one.
know it's bad. They tried to erase it from your memory. The Bears have great PR.
They did, dude. They men
And
in blacked me. Like, this is crazy.
so don't get me wrong. I think the criticism on polls is really tough, and I think that's amplified by the decision to keep Matt Eberflus. Like I really think that the optics on polls would be much different if they didn't keep Eberflus, because the reality is no GM is perfect. Like no GM goes into a draft and just nails it, right? Like every year, unless you're the Packers. Like for the most part, the Packers have pretty good drafts. The Cowboys have pretty good drafts. Now they still miss though. Like Lucas Van Ness at 13, I don't think was a great pick. He's not a bad player, but at 13, it's a little high. I do think though that Poles has done a lot more good than bad. I just think his fuck ups have been really bad, like catastrophic. Like keeping Eberflus, being really involved in the Shane Waldron search, deciding that's your guy, trading for Chase Claypool. Like some of his mistakes have been really, really, really bad. But some of it, like he has really high highs and really low lows. So I don't know. Like, would you rather have a guy like I don't know, like a GM who just sticks in the middle all the time? I don't know. Like, I want to hit the home run, and he's taken some home run swings. He has. So I don't know.
I was gonna say you could kind of even look to make it a comparison almost. It's kind of like how DaCosta was with the Ravens for even maybe now, like, right? You look, we can use the Deontay Johnson as a prime example recently. Like, I think Eric DaCosta is kind of a good maybe polls comp with more achievement. But where you're kind of like you on some of the stuff, you're like, oh, like what? But then some of the other stuff, they're like, okay, he was really cooking and he had a vision that we didn't see. So I'd say you maybe can make that comp. And look, credit where it's due to the Bears. I think this is something that I know Bears fans are very on this. I don't think they get enough national media attention for it. I would say, but they've had some misses, Lord knows. But the drafting has been relatively well.
It's not bad.
Compared to other teams in the league, I would say it has been relatively well. They've gotten a lot of very
good thing they can't maximize it, though.
Wait, what's that?
I said good thing the coaching is so great that we see it on the field all the time. Like, that's the issue is, like, the drafts have not been bad. But then I also think, like,
drafting's also not all in polls. Like, it's also a huge scouting department thing.
Yeah, I get that. But as much as it's on Eberflus, and, like, at the end of the day, these are the players that polls put on the field, and they're losing.
Yeah, but Flus, I mean,
I know it's hard. But I think they're both at fault. And
but he also chose to keep Flus out there.
That's what I'm saying. Like that is why he is not like free of criticism, because okay, whatever. You got the coach wrong the first time. Cut your losses. He didn't cut his losses, and now we're here. You didn't break the cycle. Now we're here.
It's tough. Here's what I'll say, Hunter. If you were asking me, right, gun to your head, you got to make a choice right now. Here's what I would say the best case scenario is from my perspective. I say you and I'm going to explain to you my logic. You'll see. It's going to sound bad at first, but you'll get where I'm going with it. You give Poles another year, even considering that, yeah, you might have to get rid of him in the near future after. But
dude, then you're going to get the
wait. But here's the thing. Is that then you say to Ben Johnson, look, dude, you can, right, and this might sound a little dysfunctional, unorthodox, but I don't care. Like you said, Ben Johnson's a blank check guy. You say, dude, understand this. If something goes awry in that department, you will be your decision will be, not decision, but your impact on the decision will be completely, we will listen to it. We will understand what you think is the most important, what you value the most. We will also consider and most going forward with our GM search. Because I think this is the worst case scenario, Hunter. And I think the worst case scenario is more likely than the better case we just talked about, is that the worst case is that you can Poles after this year and you get someone that just comes in and it's just significantly worse. And then you see Poles go somewhere else, do another role, and you're like, wait, but he's doing just fine. And now we look like, oh man, we jumped the gun off of Flus's terrible coaching. And again, and here's my thing too. I want to give credit where it's due because I don't want to seem like I'm just railing on the guy. And I think you agree with this too. Flus will probably go be a defensive coordinator somewhere else, and they'll have a productive defense again, and they'll be a good because he's kind of like we talk about, very similar to Dennis Allen. I bet you the same thing will happen with Dennis Allen. They'll both get defensive coordinating positions somewhere else. The defense will be humming again because all they have to focus on is the defense. But as far as being a head coach, neither of them had it. Flus specifically that we're talking about right now. I mean, it's kind of the bottom line. So I think you don't want to jump the gun just off of the yes, Poles kept Flus. But but Hunter, he valued the relationship.
Dude,
Hunter,
fuck the relationship.
He
I
want to
win. I want to win.
But he cares about his guys.
Listen, I know that Poles did the right thing by Justin. But if we could have got a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, fuck the 6th. Fuck the conditional 6th, dude. Fuck that. I don't care. This is a business, dude. Like, Kevin Warren, what he did in college was a little cutthroat. And I'm okay with that. But I want my GM to do that. Now, I don't want him to disrupt the locker room and upset people. And I think that did well by the players, but you're losing. You think when who's the Steelers GM? Omar Khan?
Yeah.
You think when they were dealing Chase Claypool to the Bears, they're gonna be like, yeah, he's a malcontent. He's not very good. No, they knew they fleeced him with the 32nd overall.
They had a party that night.
They knew it.
Can you? I mean, honestly, in hindsight, but this is what's so crazy too. Even in the day it happened, I remember, like,
I was coping hard. I was coping hard.
This is what's funny. No, I think you were the one Bears fan I talked to that really understood the magnitude of what just happened. Everyone else that was in Bears land wanted to be, and I don't blame because I know how it is being everyone knows how it is being a fan. You always want to find the best case scenario. You want to look at it from a bright light. But again, from the outside looking in, I was like, do these guys understand what just happened? Because the writing was already on the wall that Chase peaked that rookie season.
Yeah.
It was like we're getting a guy steadily declining at the young age of what was like 23, 24 at the time. I mean, 24. It's like, yeah, that was truly. And again, if we look at who the Bears could have drafted with that pick, that's a whole nother. We could have a whole separate pot off of that. Let's go review who the Bears skipped on. I mean, it's like, so to your point about, there's as many good things as Poles. There's a lot of bad, but kind of like we said with the DeCosta analogy, like, look, you would rather have a guy that swings for the fences and sometimes falls on his face, striking out, swinging so hard. And sometimes he hits that ball out of the park. It's kind of like the analogy we got to roll with, right?
All right. Enough of the sick tummy talk, because that shit just made me sick thinking about that. I remember, and I'll just end it because we're just going to keep going. But everyone was like, it was the Ravens pick, right? Because we had 2 that year from when we trade, and then it ended up being the Bears pick. And once I found out it was I was like semi okay with it when it was the Ravens pick. But then when I found out the Bears pick, I damn near lost my mind.
Neither way it was okay.
Neither way it was okay. But 32 is much different than like.
In hindsight, a 5th rounder wouldn't have even been okay. Hindsight's 2020, but
horrible. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're actually going to end it this time. Be sure to follow. We're going to be going live 3 times a week. Bring you more Bears.
At least 3 times a week.
The Bears Cave 1920 on all platforms. Have a great rest of your night. Packers versus Detroit. I'm cheering for Detroit to win, honestly. Fuck the Packers. So, good night, y'all. See ya.